So if you're a guitar player, you will no doubt have heard of the brand Vintage. They're part of the John Hornby SKUs family, who are a big instrument distributor here in the UK. Vintage have made some fantastic guitars over the years that do not cost a ton of money. They've always managed to bridge that gap between affordability and quality, and many professional bands are actually going out on tour with their guitars, even though a lot of what they do is sort of sub £600–700. So that speaks a lot for the quality of what they're actually outputting. But now they've taken a sidestep into the world of pedals, and in this video we're going to be checking out all 13 pedals from their brand new line of Vintage effects pedals. So this pedal line is full of everything you could ever need, really. There's overdrives, there's distortions, there's EQs, there's reverbs, there's delays, there's choruses, there's tremolos. You know, you can pretty much build an entire rig with what they're offering here, and each pedal individually is roughly in the UK less than like £50. So it's sort of £40 to £50 per pedal. You could build an entire rig for pretty cheap with the stuff that they have on offer. And as I said, we're gonna go through all 13 of them in this one video. So I want to say a big thank you to the guys at John Hornby SKUs and Vintage for sponsoring this video and sending me over the entire collection of pedals to check out. Now, with there being 13 pedals, I'm not going to have chance in this one video to do a deep dive on each one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you each one, tell you a little bit about it, and show you my favorite sounds from that pedal. So before I show you the first pedal, I'm using my Baum Guitars Celesta. This is plugged into the Blackstar TV10A, which is running completely clean, and that's going by the 2 Notes Torpedo Captor X, and the clean tone sounds like this. So we're going to kick things off with this pedal, which is the Overdrive. This is a really cool kind of medium gain overdrive. This is heavily influenced by the Paul Cochran Timmy. So if you're familiar with that pedal, this is the same sort of vibe. It's that kind of gain range, and it's got that same sort of EQ sculpting. The only main difference here that I can find is that these EQ controls are a little bit more wide ranging. You can actually cut and boost with them. On the Timmy, you have to turn the EQ up full to let your natural amp signal through, and then you dial it back. On this, you can add and subtract bass and treble frequencies. So I'm going to plug this in now, and you're going to hear my favorite tone. Next up, we've got the Flanger. Flangers are always interesting effects. It's not my go-to modulation effect. This is a cool one built off a BBD style circuit. It's very versatile. You can go from like some kind of vibrato-y kind of textures right through to some of those crazy jet plane-like flanger sounds. So here's how this one sounds. So that's one of the more subtle effects. I'm just going to play a bit now and do some more extreme movements with the controls so you can hear some of the crazier sounds this flanger can also do. So in some of the extreme settings, there's less usable tones, just because it's quite an extreme sound when you really push a flanger in that way. You can get some of those pretty wacky sounds going on, but in those kind of lower swirly modulation sounds, I think the flanger really does a great job. It sounds really nice, and it really kind of fattens up clean parts in a really nice way. Next up, we've got my favorite modulation effect, which is chorus. This one is based off like a 1970s style chorus, so probably somewhere in that kind of early Boss CE1 kind of vibe. It's great for those, you know, fat, clean, lush things that we really love choruses for. Then also you can use it for my favorite use of chorus, which is an 80s kind of sound. So I'm gonna plug this in so we can hear it. So that's my kind of favorite chorus sound, but one other thing that's quite cool that you can do is if you actually turn the rate up and just back the depth off a little bit, if you're on a gig and you ever need a Leslie speaker kind of sound for like a part in a song, but you don't have a way to simulate it, a lower depth, high rate chorus can actually give you a similar sort of vibe. It doesn't sound exactly like a Leslie, but if you're in the middle of a song and you need it for like one segment, you can pretty much get away with this kind of thing. Doesn't sound exactly like a Leslie, but as I said, in a pinch, you can use that kind of thing to a really cool effect. Next up, we're taking a bit of a detour. We've got the American Fuzz. Now, this is a high gain, very kind of saturated, almost distortion-like fuzz. So this is great for that kind of retro rock thing, but also if you're into 90s grunge, there was a lot of things like the Electro Harmonics Big Muff used. I have a feeling this is kind of based in that kind of ballpark. I haven't actually plugged this one in, but that's kind of where the impression of this is taking me. So let's plug this one in and hear some fuzz sounds. So it's definitely got a bit of a big muff edge to it, but there's also kind of like a fuzz facey sort of thing there. When I was playing with the tone control, when I was dialing this in, I did notice that when you have the tone control all the way down, you get kind of super woolly, really apparent when the gain is high as well. And then as you turn it up, it just kind of rips all of that low end away, and you get this really kind of harsh kind of fuzz. That's really cool because you could use that as like a filtery kind of thing. If you were looking for that kind of like music played down a telephone sort of effect in a recording, that would do such a good job at that. Where I think this really excels though is with the tone control just past midnight. You get that kind of big woolliness, but then also you get this slightly stuttery, glitchy thing. So yeah, that's actually really fun. I really like that fuzz. All right, pedal number 5 is the Maytone. Now, it doesn't take a genius to work out what this probably is. This is obviously going to be like a Vox AC30 Brian May kind of thing. You can pretty much tell from the design of this and the fact it's called Maytone. So what this pedal is going to do is it's going to give you that classic, crisp but saturated Brian May mid-range heavy guitar tone. hear that kind of voxy thing going on there. It's that nice kind of chunky mid-range. It's got a surprising amount of gain on tap because we often think of Voxy C30s as being very clean, but they do actually pack quite a punch when you crank them. The voice control is interesting because when we crank it, we add this kind of like mid-range punch. That's quite cool because you get really kind of throaty and kind of aggressive, but then as you dial it back, it takes all those mids out and it makes it very, very scooped. And actually pulls out some of the gain as well. You get much more gain in the higher register. And again, like I said, it's got a surprising amount of gain on tap if you kind of push the voice and the drive. You're not going to be playing thrash metal on that, but there's plenty of gain there to keep most people happy. Next up, we've got the American Pie. This is, as you can tell by the look of it, a Tweed amp style pedal. This is designed to give you the sound of a cranked up deluxe amp. Think 70s American rock, especially West Coast American rock, and then you're in the right ballpark totally. So you can hear that definitely nails that kind of Stonesy vibe. It's a really hard thing to dial into a pedal, that kind of sound, because there's not many things that sound like a cranked Tweed amp. And I've always found that even pedals that claim to simulate that don't quite hit it. This kind of feels quite close. It's definitely got that kind of gritty sort of breakup. You can kind of feel the compression of the amp. Again, like with the Vox, you've got the voice control, so you can dial the voice all the way out and kind of scoop it a bit more. It scoops it a bit, but then also it makes it much cleaner, and then you can bring the voice back in to kind of add that gain. You probably wouldn't play a Tweed style amp with that much gain, but again, you could go full gain. That, to me, that's just not the sound of a kind of crank deluxe. The deluxe sound is kind of more in this ballpark. That's kind of more of the correct gain staging there. But I really like that sound, actually. That's a really cool sounding pedal. That is a sound that I would use quite a lot because I'm a big fan of the Tweed amp thing. But, you know, you either have to have a Tweed amp and turn it to unsustainable volume levels, or someone needs to invent a pedal that does that job really well. And I actually think Vintage have filled that gap with this thing. So yeah, that one is really cool. Next up, we've got another amp style one, and this time we're looking at the Commander. Now this one is a bit more of like your Marshall in a box kind of thing. Think everything from like 60s plexis through to like higher gain, probably like JCM kind of era Marshalls. There's plenty of in this that will take you from, you know, blues, classic rock, right up to kind of like 80s metal and the kind of the beginnings of heavy music. So this is a fun one. So, I mean, there's not a lot to say about that. That's just a great kind of Marshall in a box sort of sound. That tone that I've dialed in there is kind of like a higher gain AC/DC crunch through to like a early kind of new wave of British heavy metal thing. There's enough gain in this to satisfy, so like you can turn that gain up and you know, you're not going to play the heaviest styles of music in the world with this, but if you actually use this into the front of an overdriven amp, then you'd really be cooking. This also has some quite cool things with the voice control. So if we keep the gain quite high and we turn the voice control all the way down, what we kind of go into is that sort of like slightly fuzzy 60s Marshall thing. Very kind of saggy and very fuzzy, and then as we increase the voice control, it kind of just opens that up and makes it kind of much more bright and less compressed. So yeah, that's a great sound. It can do all that stuff, but then you can also dial the gain back and, you know, you can go to those kind of classic crunch sounds. So yeah, that's a really cool Marshall in a box pedal. And unlike some other Marshall in a box pedals where they just kind of emulate one thing, this is actually quite a good cross section of every Marshall tone, which I quite like. So yeah, that's a really fun one. Next up, we've got the transparent overdrive. Now, my instant reaction to this when I saw the volume gain and tone layout was that this could be a clon. It doesn't actually reference the clon anywhere in the vintage kind of information sheets, but I would probably estimate that it could be a clone based on the control layout. So let's find out. The thing I noticed most was the gain control is like super sensitive. So when the gain control's here, it's quite low gain. And then as soon as you get to like here, which is like 15–20% of the range, there's a ton of gain. So that leads me to think this could well be a clone. It also does that kind of, you know, high volume, no gain, clean boosty kind of thing, especially when you put it in position 4. So that might well be a secret clone there from Vintage, which if it is, it's a really good one and it sounds great. If it's not, it functions as one, which is a bonus. So for the price that this retails for, that one is definitely a bit of a steal. Next up, we've got the Tremolo. This is a really interesting one because this is actually like a photoelectric kind of tremolo circuit, which is very similar to the type you'd find built into like old style tube amps. I have never been the biggest user of tremolo, but in recent years, it's actually been an effect I've started to kind of pull towards. And I do now appreciate a really good kind of subtle tremolo, especially when I'm playing some bluesier stuff. So tremolo is always fun. Let's plug this one in and hear what it sounds like. Now, I really like more subtle tremolos like that, kind of like a fast rate with a low intensity. But what you can do with this, you can bump that up and get quite choppy. And the other thing I really like about this is actually the fact that we've got this light here pulsating from green to red that shows you the speed of the tremolo. So as I turn the rate down, the light pulsation decreases. So that's a much kind of slow, smoother tremolo. What's really cool is you can hear it kind of fade in as well. It's not like one of those tremolos that's just like a hard cut. It's almost like a volume swell. And then obviously as we put it up full, we go pretty crazy. Pretty fun. I'm a big fan of amp style tremolos anyway. So yeah, this kind of ticks a lot of boxes for me. I think Vintage have done a great job capturing that vintagey vibe with this sound. Next up, we've got a pedal that isn't the most fun pedal in the world, but it can get you out of some quite sticky situations if you're ever in tonal dire straits. And that is a 6-band EQ. Now, a 6-band EQ is really useful because if you're playing a gig, for instance, and you're using rented gear or you're borrowing gear that's unfamiliar to you, and you can't quite dial in the sound with the amp or whatever you're using, an EQ can actually go a long way in helping you because you'll actually have a little bit more flexibility in dialing things in. They're also useful as lead boosts. And the other way they're really useful is if you're someone who goes between like a Strat and a Les Paul or something with low output pickups and high output pickups, single coils to humbuckers or whatever, you can actually use an EQ pedal to compensate so that the tonal differences aren't too drastic and the volume differences are quite, kind of uniform as well. Very useful pedal to have in your arsenal. So that's the way I like to use EQs, is just as a push. I like to actually use them just to give the amp a bit of a lift. You can hear the amp's very clean without it. As soon as I turn it on, kind of lifts it up a bit. And this actually has way more boost, so I could hit the amp harder if I wanted to. Now I'm using quite a mid-heavy boost there. You can see I'm really kind of ramping up this mid-frequency range. But what some people do is they might actually scoop a lot of that stuff out and go more extreme with the highs and lows. And that can drastically change the sound of your guitar. So I did some quite extreme EQ moves there, but you could really see how much that actually did affect my guitar sound. I can make my guitar sound very, very different from real kind of fat and woolly to mid-range scooped or mid-range pushed to really bright. You get the idea. It's a very flexible tone shaping thing. And, I agree that while EQ pedals aren't the most fun things to give up space in your pedal board for, they can be very, very useful. As you've seen there, that can be a very, 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 very beneficial addition to your rig because it can get you out of all kinds of tonal problems. Next up, we've got the delay. Now, as you can see from the very simple layout of this, they've gone for an analog style delay, which I'm very happy about because I prefer analog style delays. I'm not a huge delay player at the best of times. I only use delay if I'm A, on a tour where there's a song or two that I need a delay sound for, or B, I'll use a slapback kind of delay just for a bit of ambience in some lead stuff or just for a textural thing. But I very rarely play with delay as such. So I'm very glad personally that they went down the analog route because that fits what I like a little bit better. So let's plug this one in and hear some sounds. So for me as a player, that's probably my limit with delay. The way I would normally use the delays, either like that for this kind of slightly washy ambient thing, or I would have low repeats, fast speed for like a slapback kind of thing. Next up is the one thing I can never be without in my own rig, and that is reverb. Reverb for me is an absolutely essential thing. I cannot function without reverb, which is the stupid thing to say really, but I have to have it in some capacity, whether it's from a pedal, whether it's from the amp itself. I don't really care, I just need some kind of reverb. I really don't like the sound of a dry guitar for some reason. I've just always liked the sound of reverb. So for me, reverb is a big part of how I play guitar as well. And this is a very tweakable reverb. So as you can see, you can do a lot of different things with this, with all the different controls on offer. So if you're someone like me who's always striving for the perfect reverb, this one is a lot of fun. It doesn't specify what type of reverb that is, but it's definitely a big space, kind of feels very like hall reverb-esque. I always like to keep the pre-delay quite low. The pre-delay is basically like the time it takes for the reverb to start. So if you imagine you're on stage and you hit a note or you hit a drum, it's the time it takes for the sound to hit the back of the hall and come back to you. So the higher that is, you can hear there's almost that delay on the reverb. That's the pre-delay taking effect. So I like the reverb to be more immediate. But you can get very kind of spacey and very ambient if you really crank the decay and the pre-delay. It's almost got like a pad-like quality to it, and it's got this low-pass filter as well, which is really fun because you can have quite a dark reverb. Or a really, really bright reverb. That's so bright there. It's almost kind of verging on like an 80s kind of plate reverb or like a shimmer verb or something. It's super, super bright and very cutting. Out of the box, this is a really good sounding reverb. I kind of feel like this is one that you would tweak into your setup and then leave alone because it does quite a lot of things. It doesn't feel like the sort of reverb that you would want to constantly be tweaking on the fly, but you would find a sound you like and then that would just be your reverb sound. And then finally, the only dual function pedal of this entire range, the distortion. As you can see from this one, it's got two foot switches. This one has an on and off switch and a boost circuit. So this is really cool if you're looking for kind of like a double gain stage thing. You could use the boost to either kick in a bit more drive or punch to your existing sound, or use it as a lead boost. So that's always fun. I'm a big fan of double pedals anyway. A lot of my touring board has dual-sided overdrives on because I kind of just feel like you get more for your real estate. And the option to have extra things live, whether that's gain stages or volume boosts, is always pretty beneficial. So that's a really cool kind of high gain distortion sound. I've only got the gain on halfway there. Obviously we could go much higher. That's enough for most use cases. That boost is pretty bright actually as well. Even when you're playing with a lower gain sound, it really doesn't add so much gain, but it adds a lot of top end. That would be really useful if you're just trying to cut through live. You have to set it in very kind of subtle settings just to give the pedal a slight lift. But it does have quite a lot of kind of additional headroom on tap, so if we crank it, I'm not sure how that would sound at stage volume because that's very cutting and it does sweep all of the low end off. It would be nice if it was a bit more of a full range boost, but there's definitely some use cases for that, I think, but it's just kind of dialing it into your rig. This is, for me personally, not a sound I would usually gravitate towards. I'm not a high gain distortion kind of guy. It does sound great. There was a lot of good sounds in there. I quite like it when I was experimenting with some of the lower gain sounds like this. Paired with quite a powerful 3-band EQ, it is a pedal that can do a lot of different things. Even though it's a high gain pedal, I think there's a lot of use cases for many different people to try this thing out. But yeah, there we go. There is a run through, an overview, and a kind of the first impressions of all 13 pedals in the brand new vintage pedal range. We covered a lot of tonal ground in this video. Let me know down below in the comments what your favorite one is. I actually think Vintage have done a great job with some of these. There's a few of these that I really, really like. I like the Overdrive. I love the transparent Overdrive as well. I loved the kind of the Tweed kind of vibe one. That was great sounding. The Marshall one was very cool, and I love the chorus as well. So there's a couple of these that I would instantly think, oh yeah, that's a sound that I could, you know, I could get on board with and actually use. Some of them, for instance, like the Flanger, this Distortion, they're not to my personal taste. They're still great pedals and they're still super versatile. They're just not sounds that I personally gravitate towards using. But nonetheless, I think Vintage have done a fantastic job in basically pulling together 13 really great sounding pedals. And each one of them is around the sort of 40 to 50 pound mark in the UK. And as I mentioned earlier, you could pick 5 or 6 of these, call it £300 worth of budget, and you could have an entire rig. These are brand new, so I'm guessing at the time of this video coming out, not many people out there will have actually had a chance to try these yet. If you have tried them, I'd love to hear what you thought about them. And I'd also love to hear what you thought about some of the sounds I got in this video. I just kind of played through what my favorite settings were when I was exploring the pedals. So, you know, obviously you may not have heard the pedals to your exact taste as well. You just heard what I thought was a good sound. Because if we did a deep dive on every one of these pedals, this would be a way longer video than it currently is. So yeah, let me know what your favorite sounds were. Let me know if you've tried one. If you pick any up, I'd love to hear how you guys get on with them. There are some links down below in the description where you can check out all of these pedals for yourself. While you're doing that, don't forget to hit that like button. And if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing as well. Once again, a big thank you to my friends over at John Hornby Skews for sending these pedals for you to check out and sponsoring the video today. Thank you guys for watching as always. I'll see you very soon.